no-fly zone, 3 words dominating the discussion over just what to do next in Libya. But shutting down the skies is fraught with issues, political ones, legal ones, not to mention what the Libyan people think about it all. Can a no-fly zone over Libya really help to end the violence? This is Inside Story. Hello, I'm Kamal Santamaria. So there have been condemnations, there's been a Security Council resolution, sanctions too, all aimed at Libya, and all arguably not having much of an impact yet. Yes, the international community is speaking loudly and for the most part with a united voice. But the violence goes on in Libya and Muammar Gaddafi remains as defiant as ever. So what next? Well, the most talked about idea is a no-fly zone over the embattled country, something the United States has said is a distinct possibility.
One of those actions that is under review is a no-fly zone. There are arguments that would favor it, questions that would be raised about it, but it is under active consideration. In the years ahead, Libya could become a peaceful democracy, or it could face protracted civil war, or it could descend into chaos. The stakes are high.
Yeah, they certainly are, but in the end we're dealing with logistics here. What is a no-fly zone? How does it work? Can it work? And if everyone's not in agreement over it, how legal will it be? All things we want to explore, but first it's worth considering this. Imposing any sort of restriction over Libya right now is fraught because it is very much a fragmented country. From town to town, control effectively changes hands. So let's introduce our guests. In Los Angeles is Marine Lieutenant Colonel Jay Stout. He's a former fighter jet pilot, the author of a book as well about the 1991 Gulf War in Iraq. In Zarzis, which is close to the Tunisian-Libyan border, is Wahid Burshan, a Libyan political analyst and activist. And rounding out our panel in London, Professor Khawar Qureshi, who is a specialist in international law at McNair Chambers. Gentlemen, I thank you all for your time and for joining us on Inside Story. The logistics of this, first of all, and I'm going to start with Lieutenant Colonel Jay Stout in Los Angeles. Let's forget whether this is right or wrong, yes or no, indifferent or otherwise. The actual logistics in a country which is so fragmented at the moment, can a no-fly zone actually work?
Well, actually getting the aircraft into theater over Libya is not too problematic. The aircraft have pretty good range, they move pretty quickly. However, once they're out of fuel, they have to go somewhere. They need to go to a base. At that base, the aircraft need to be maintained. The armaments need to be maintained as well. Those maintainers need to be housed. They need to be fed. Aircraft, again, need to be fueled. It's a big orchestrated effort that's not easily put into place.
But how quickly do you think they could do that, just out of interest?
Certainly within a few days. Aircraft could be gotten there probably right away, but actually getting all the support personnel into place would probably take, again, a few days.
Okay, let's get a quick thought from Wahid Burshan over there in Zarzis in Tunisia near the border. Just your thoughts on this whole idea in the first place, because it seems to be, I will say, the only idea at the moment, or certainly the most prominent idea.
Well, obviously, let me start at the outset and explain how the Libyan people view this. I mean, Libyan people are very, very proud people. Mm-hmm. And instinctively, they feel that they have to do this on their own. This is an internal thing. This is sort of like a house cleaning kind of thing. And obviously, they feel like they could do it and do it themselves. But some of the pragmatists, they look at the situation. They look at the way Gaddafi is clinching to power and fighting back and so on and so forth. They feel that they have to have some assistance, especially for the air coverage and so on. So clearly, Libyan are split about it. They feel that they want to do it themselves. But I would say if the case is made properly, meaning is that it's a clear-cut, well understood what exactly the scope of this no-fly zone and when it ends and so on, and the fact that it's directed to the regime and to empower and assist the Libyan people gain their freedom, I think that it could have it could be possible.
Okay, let's just pause and look at some of the reasoning and the logistics from the United States, at least, behind this idea of the no-fly zone. It comes from the head of US Central Command, who is General James Mattis, and the Republican Senator John McCain. They were both speaking at a Senate hearing on Capitol Hill. Have a quick listen to this.
You would have to remove the air defense capability in order to establish the no-fly zone, so it just no illusions here. It would be a military operation. It wouldn't simply be telling people not to fly airplanes.
The declaration of a no-fly zone to the enemy would be have a significant deterring effect on their desire to fly. I think we know that to be the case.
Jay Stout in Los Angeles, just a quick word from you again on the logistics side of things. Both those men, they seem to be saying, yes, it's a military operation, but yes, it would actually work. It would deter military flights out of Libya at least. My thoughts, and this is very basic thoughts, is that this is something that could be easily defied, especially by a man like Colonel Gaddafi. If he wants to send his planes in the air, he probably will.
He could, but if he puts his planes in the air, those pilots are going to die if a no-fly zone is established. It's interesting to me the recently reported bombing at Brega is a good indicator of the state of the Libyan Air Force. A single jet apparently dropped 2 bombs. Now, normally, aircraft don't go out in single, by themselves. Normally, they go in pairs or in flights of 4 or in bigger packages. So that tells me is that the Libyan Air Force has decayed to a point where they can't get more than 1 or 2 aircraft airborne, or that the pilots aren't willing to fly. But again, it's a good indicator of the state of the Libyan Air Force.
Okay, this is good. We're getting an idea of the logistics behind how it works. I want to look at the legality now. That's why we've got Khawa Qureshi with us from London to talk about, as I say, legality. Am I right in saying that for this to be quote-unquote legal, it will need a UN Security Council resolution, something like, and I believe it was called Operation Deny Flight, which was used in Bosnia back in 1993?
That's certainly the position that's put forward by certain members of the Security Council. There'll be viewers familiar with what happened in Iraq after the intervention in 1990. From 1991 to 2003, the United Kingdom and France set up no-fly zones in the northern and southern sectors of Iraq, principally to protect the Kurds in the north and the Shias in the south. The Russians took the view that this was not permissible. The Security Council resolution authorizing use of force in Iraq, Resolution 688 of December 1990, didn't permit the continuation of combat activities and air patrols by UK and French fighter planes, which were not passive, they were active. Moving forwards, the resolution that was passed by the Security Council on the 26th of February of this year condemns the violation of human rights in Libya, imposes sanctions on the Libyan regime, but doesn't expressly authorize the use of military force, let alone the creation of no-fly zones. So whilst the British Prime Minister, Mr. Cameron, has been very active in promoting this idea, and others have joined him, there have been voices of opposition voiced, not least by the Russians. So actual implementation might be problematic.
Yeah, we do see this with the UN Security Council. We often see the idea of splits when moving towards resolutions. Let's have a quick look, though, at something. They call this Chapter 42, or at least in part, of the United Nations Charter. It says if non-military methods are deemed insufficient, it, the Security Council, may take such action by air, sea or land forces as may be necessary to maintain or restore international peace and security. Such action may include demonstrations, blockade and other operations by air, sea or land forces of members of the United Nations. Khawa Qureshi, is that enough if there is no resolution which makes a legal no-fly zone, if I can put it that way? Is Chapter 42 enough to cover them?
Let's be clear that the Security Council in its resolution 1970 has invoked Article 41. Article 41 has imposed economic and non-military measures. If we consider the situation in Iraq, Resolution 687, it passed in August 1990, imposed non-military measures by invoking Article 41. The military measures, authorization of use of force, took place in December 1990. through Resolution 688. So several months were allowed to pass. Saddam Hussein's regime was given an opportunity to leave Kuwait. It had invaded a sovereign state, and its failure to do so led to authorization of use of force. Resolution 1970 was only passed 3 days ago. It expressly refers to Article 41. For Article 42 to be utilized, it would require the Security Council to pass another resolution, unanimous, where all of the permanent powers agree. As I've just mentioned, the Russians have begun to voice dissent as to the imposition of a no-fly zone. So it's possible, as happened in the case of Iraq in 1991, that certain members of NATO and or the Security Council may have to undertake such action on their own without Security Council cover if they believe strongly enough that this is necessary and justified.
Okay, so we've looked at the logistics, we've looked at the legality. The Libyan people, though, are the ones at the centre of all this. Wahid Burshan over there on the border, let's come back to you, because the idea you put forward earlier was that the Libyan people obviously want some help, they want some assistance, but it's a case of how much and how big and potentially damaging that assistance could be. We're discussing all of this. We're talking about other countries intervening. What about countries in the region? The Arab League, those sorts of Arab solutions for Arab problems, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah, if I may, I would like to go back to the point. I think that was Senator McCain or the General Central Command was mentioning that they have to take the air defenses out and things like that in order for them to have, to manage the skies. I think that could be problematic. I would really think that the Libyan people may consider that hostile, and it may tip the point to Gaddafi. I really think that needs to be managed properly in terms of how they deal with the Libyan military. The Libyan military, obviously, they are not necessarily pro-Gaddafi. It's I mean, they are ordered to do, and as a matter of fact, I want to go back to the point of the bombing of Ajdabia and Brega, and the gentleman, he was right that there was a single plane that did that, but what we heard, the reports were those bombs were really kind of not on target. They kind of, the officers themselves were throwing those bombs, away from the target. As you can see, there's a dissent in the military, and I think we need to be careful, and the Libyan people are aware of that. If we kind of target the military that may be a problem. And to go back to your point or your question about the Arab League, I'm not sure there's that much confidence in what the rest of the Arab countries may be able to do militarily. That is, I think they're doing a great job. I myself in Tunisia here, and I know Egypt is the same way. The Tunisian people and the Egyptian people are really coming together to assist on the medical care and so on and so forth. I think that's the best they can do. Militarily, I'm not sure that's available to them.
As a Libyan, how do you feel about, I mean, actually this discussion that we're having? As I pointed out in my last question, we're talking about a whole stack of other countries under the banner of the United Nations, or the international community, as we say, deciding what to do about your country.
Well, it is kind of difficult to be sitting in this and kind of thinking through what would happen to my country. It is definitely the Libyan people, as like I said, they're very, very proud people. And as a matter of fact, Gaddafi have used those sentiments a great deal. I mean, he's always concerned about, foreign invaders coming to get you and so on and so forth. You need to defend yourself. And the Libyan people can definitely rally to that. So we definitely need to be concise on the resolutions and the approach and communicating with the Libyan people as what the objective is, and if the objective, like I said, is to free or assist the Libyan people in their freedom, I think that may be a good approach to topple him, I guess.
Jay Stout in Los Angeles, let me come back to you to expand on what we're speaking with Wahid about there, because we're discussing there really essentially what is the best option for the Libyan people right now. I want your military mind on this. In the current status, in this current situation, does a no-fly zone look like the best option at the moment, the only option at the moment, or do you think there are other avenues to go down?
Well, I will agree with the other gentleman. To establish a no-fly zone, you do have to take out those air defenses, and that's a violent act. That's a very aggressive act, and it leaves Libya naked to air aggression. Now, that being the case, it may be that a no-fly zone, as seemingly innocuous as it is kind of like using a hammer when a surgeon's knife might be a little bit better option. I think that's why world leaders are hesitant to commit wholly to the idea of a no-fly zone.
What would the surgeon's knife be in this case then?
Ideally, it would be diplomacy, I think, but establishing the no-fly zone certainly is not going to stop the killing. You can kill your people with means other than air power, and I think that's taken place and would continue regardless of whether or not a no-fly zone is in place.
Very diplomatically handled there, Lieutenant Colonel. Let me go over to Kawakareshi in London for a legal mind. But again, I want your opinion here. We got the opinion there of Jay Stout in Los Angeles, and you, Mr. Koreshi, have given us the history of Security Council resolutions and how they work and how they may not work. Your actual opinion on this, if we were to go to a resolution on no-fly zone, is it the best option at the moment?
First point is, given the history of Iraq, and let's not forget there are parallels that we can learn from and lessons that we need to learn from so that we don't make the same mistakes in terms of intervention. There was considerable opposition to the no-fly zones in northern and southern Iraq from Russia and China. It's highly likely that similar opposition would be voiced if no-fly zones were sought to be imposed through the Security Council resolution invoking Article 42, namely military measures. So it seems unlikely that the Security Council would authorize such use of force, which leaves it to states of their own volition to use force. The logistical difficulties of establishing, patrolling Libyan skies, as vast as they are, having access to airstrips the UK has in Cyprus at Akrotiri, the US is positioning its aircraft carriers in the Mediterranean, that might enable the aircraft to patrol the skies. But fundamentally, the questions are, what will this achieve? Will it be counterproductive? Are there other ways of going about this? And we can see that the killing is taking place. Artillery bombardment is being used. You have ground troops who are carrying out offensives, however weak and enfeebled they may be. And there's the potential to use helicopters and evade detection on radar, carry out missions, and thus render the no-fly zone impotent. And the last thing that the international community wants to do is to impose a requirement that may have questionable legality and see it being violated. The situation in Iraq was very different. In Iraq, what the international community was seeking to do was to ensure that an already enfeebled, weakened military capability on the part of the Iraqis after the first Gulf War wasn't used to carry out atrocities against the Kurds in the north and the Shias in the south in a fairly effective manner.
Wahid Burshan, over there at the border, Tunisian-Libyan border, let's actually move past the idea of a no-fly zone, because we don't know if it's going to actually come into place or not, and whether it will be done by a UN Security Council or not. My question to you is whether you think that talk of no-fly zones and sanctions and all these things are actually just stepping stones on the way to something much bigger, that perhaps the international community is looking at Muammar Gaddafi and the regime right now and saying, you know, there's probably only one option to get rid of him.
Well, I think we need to be very, very careful of that. I mean, you mentioned earlier, it is about the Libyan people. The Libyan people have already decided to look beyond this gentleman, and they are looking for the future. They want to develop a modern society, a modern country, and I think they are looking for the day where they hopefully can do this as seamlessly as possible, or as easy as possible. I'm not sure that's that's available to them at this point. So looking from that perspective, I think if they, and they feel that they're capable of doing so, what you need to look for is ways to assist them and empower them, give them the confidence. I don't know, I'm not a military man, but maybe give them some intelligence and you know, to be careful of certain situations and so on and so forth. That kind of, I don't know, if, you could call it a positive support, if you will. I think that probably be much more conducive to them. I look forward to developing some leadership, some structure, and some of the freed cities where they will be able to develop certain leadership where the rest of the international community will be able to communicate with them and assist them and to help them. And I understand the issue. The international community want to help the Libyan people, but it's very, very difficult when, just like you said earlier, it's cities, you know, all over the place, and it's very, very difficult to assist. But we need to kind of think out of the box. We need to think what's best for the Libyan people. I hope the international community, and I think this is the biggest fear, the Arab countries, they all have tasted what the international community have done to them in terms of Iraq and so on. And they are a little bit skeptic as, okay, it could be a good cause at the beginning, but it ends up to something totally different. It warped itself to, you know, scenarios that at this point we don't see. And that's the biggest fear. If we can develop a strategy and and communicate it clearly to the people and focus on assisting them, I think it would, the people are willing and capable of handling Gaddafi's issue on their own.
Okay, final quick thought, because we are running out of time, but I just want to raise one more issue. It was an isolated incident, but perhaps an indication of the unpredictability we're dealing with as well. Go back to 21st February, 2 Libyan jets landed in Malta, completely unexpectedly. On board, 2 senior pilots who said they'd been ordered to fire on protesters in Benghazi. They said they simply couldn't do it. They defied the orders, they flew to Malta, they were seeking political asylum instead. Jay Stout in Los Angeles, final word with you. That just shows that we are dealing with something very unpredictable here, not just Gaddafi, but whether his Air Force wants to actually follow him or not. It goes back to the central point, can this idea be effective or not, this no-fly zone, when you're dealing with potential incidents like that?
Yes, I think the no-fly zone, if the United States and the Europeans press ahead with it, can be very effective. However, I don't know that it's necessary. Those 2 pilots who defected, again, are very indicative of a fractured Air Force. No one wants to kill their own people, and I think those 2 pilots are indicative of that. And I think this might be something best left to the Libyan people for the time being.
Gentlemen, we've covered a lot of ground, a lot of different topics, but it's a very interesting one as well, and I'm glad to have all of your viewpoints there. Jay Stout, who was in Los Angeles, he's a former US fighter pilot. We've had Wahid Borshan as well, a Libyan political analyst, and Khawa Qureshi, who is an international law specialist, giving us all the angles on this idea of a no-fly zone over Libya. Gentlemen, thank you. And thank you, our viewers, for joining us for Inside Story. As ever, we welcome comments and suggestions. You can hop on the email if you like. InsideStory@aljazeera.net is where to send your suggestions. I'm Kamal Santa Marie from the whole team. Goodbye for now.